Hello everyone, my name is Jack McCambley and today I want to talk to you about why regulation is the best way to ensure ethical behaviour is upheld in individuals and corporations. My arguments are in favour of the effects that the implementation of regulation can have on the safety within society. I will explain how within the corporate environments regulation is the best way to ensure market fairness and economical stability. My final argument is that regulation alone is not enough to ensure ethical behaviour within society and business environments, with strong societal and corporate culture needed to complement regulation in order for ethical competence to be achieved.
Hi, my name is Julia and I will be arguing that regulation is not the best way to ensure ethical behaviour in individuals and corporations. My arguments support that ethical behaviour will be best ensured through ethics training programs and through an open culture approach in corporations, whereby ethical policies are formulated to satisfy the differing morals and needs of the employees.
We live in a world where law is followed, a right or a wrong. It is how society was constructed. It is what keeps people in line with what we as a society accepts. Ethics is threatened by behaviours such as incompetence and self-interest. These self-interest and egotistical attitudes is what provides oxygen to the heart of unethical behaviour. Without ethical behaviours being complemented by rules and regulations, we will live in a world full of greed and injustice. Regulations make individuals and corporations accountable for their actions. We implement regulation to ensure that the decisions that we as an individual make do not negatively affect others in the process. Regulation and ethical behaviour work in tandem. Ethical behaviour is defined as acting in ways consistent with what society and individuals typically think are good values. Ethical behaviours are shaped by the values and beliefs that we are brought up on. In Australia, we do not carry guns because we believe that it can cause harm. Thus, we regulate gun control. Other countries, such as the United States, believe that carrying guns is good for protection and allow the possession of guns. This example of gun control shows how cultural beliefs affect the ethical values on an individual. Another common individual regulation is driving under the influence. Governments around the world regulate drink driving to ensure safety for drivers. Governments use law and regulation as a minimum requirement of ethical behaviour, but without it, the safety and well-being of others within society would be compromised.
In rebuttal to Jack's arguments, it can be argued that regulation is not the best way to ensure ethical behaviour in individuals and in corporations, as there are more effective measures to implement ethical behaviour. To ensure ethical behaviour is present in the daily operations of corporations and amongst employees, enforcement and regulation of ethical behaviour requires constant vigilance, surveillance and monitoring. This process alone is very costly and time-consuming, and it still does not ensure ethical behaviour will be obtained in corporations. Therefore, the conduct of employees and how they act in certain situations in a professional and personal context can only be regulated to a certain extent that is reasonable, responsive, and provides the exercise of ethical behaviour that is desired by corporations. Additionally, regulation of ethical behaviour of individuals in a business environment is further limited, as it is assumed the primary objective of corporations is to generate profit, and in the process of their decision-making, ethical consideration can be absent. As a result of the intense and somewhat brutal competition between corporations, moral sensitivity in business-related transactions is reduced if the profit can be enhanced and expenses can be decreased through taking an unethical avenue. To overcome these barriers, in addition to regulation, ethics training should be compulsory in all corporations. Ethics training should be conducted whereby employees respond to hypothetical ethical situations and the possible ethical dilemmas that might arise in their professional and personal life. Employees should be empowered to make better decisions and be advised of the way in which they should respond, which is ethically and legally sound. Ethic training programs will provide will better ensure ethical behavior is exhibited in corporations, as employers will be able to recognize unethical practices of which might have become standard in their workplace and ingrained in their corporate culture. Employers will be better educated in the possible approaches in which and the ways in which they can handle an unethical situation or dilemma, and will be supplied with sufficient ethical reasoning to underpin their decision-making process, whilst understanding the consequences and implications of their actions, to hopefully ensure they are able to reach the most ethically responsible outcome.
Corporate environments require ethical behaviours to be upheld in order to achieve honesty, fairness, equality, and diversity. The greed for money and egotistical motives of certain individuals and companies have destroyed the industry's ability to self-regulate their business activities. Corporate scandals such as the Enron collapse in 2001 and Lehman Brothers in 2008 have tainted the ethical reputation of the corporate industries, which have called for the need of increase in regulation. Due to the lack of competence, integrity, and ethical value that these entities possessed, governments and authorities believed that the implementation of regulation, procedures, and policies was the best form of action to maintain ethical behaviour within corporate environments. Rules and regulations are also in place to control industry competition and to also ensure that these organisations are acting appropriately regarding their customers and employees. Post the Enron collapse, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act 2002 was created as an international regulatory framework for corporations seeking access to the US capital markets and also their auditors. Increased regulation on roles, responsibilities and competence of directors were all part of the Act, as well as ensuring accuracy, transparency of all financial reports. In response to the global financial crisis of 2008, the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision created Basel III in order to strengthen the regulation, supervision and risk management of the banking sector. The implementation of these regulatory reforms restructure the operations of entities within industries, allowing for a safer, efficient and stable corporate environment and global economy. Regulation is the best way in setting a standard within a corporate entity that is followed and expected by employees. This standard provides a platform for ethical behaviour not only within the entity but within the industry as a whole.
In rebuttal to Jack's argument, establishing a strong corporate culture is not the best way to ensure ethical behaviour in individuals and corporations. If the ethics held by certain individuals does not align with the ethics regulated by an established corporate culture. Creating policies and enforcing rules is not the best way to ensure ethical behaviour, as what is considered to be ethical and unethical is largely subjective, and it is heavily dependent on the individual and the strength of their moral compass. Ethics are derived from an individual's core beliefs, values, morals, and the perception imposed by society and through the media. Therefore, what is perceived to be ethical by one individual might differ from the next, and this in turn creates a severe threat to corporations and their established corporate culture, whereby as a result of the unique nature of ethics, employees might rebel or cease to exercise proper ethical consideration and ethical behaviour if their personal beliefs do not align with the established corporate culture. In order to overcome this barrier and ensure ethical behaviour is carried out by individuals and in corporations, firms are encouraged to assess the current mission, values and goals of their current ethical policies, collect feedback from employees about which ethics are important to them and with which ethical issues or dilemmas the employees might have experienced in the workplace. Once this information is collected, this will allow the creation of an implicit, open, ethical culture that is responsive to the shared values and needs of employees. Through this open culture approach, employees are more likely to display ethical behaviour in an environment in which the ethics that are most important to them will be taken into account and thus facilitate effective ethical behaviour changes. Essentially, an individual's own sense of morality will prevail above any regulation or set rules. if the employee believes it does not align with their own beliefs, values, and morals. To ensure employees adhere to an open culture, a reward system is best suitable to ensure ethical behavior, in which top management will support and encourage employees to think independently about what is most ethical and encourage their own judgment in order to achieve the most ethical outcome that is desired by the individual and hopefully the corporation. In an open culture, it will also be required for repercussions to be carried out in the case of any wrongdoing in order to extinguish unethical behavior and show other employees that unethical behavior will not be tolerated in their open culture.
Individuals and corporations argue that there is a time and cost factor when implementing regulation within society and industry. Time and money are costs of implementation of regulation, but who could question the strengthening the safety of our society and the financial well-being of our economies? Regulation alone is not enough to ensure ethical behaviour is upheld in individuals and corporations. Strong culture within communities and corporate entities is pivotal when operating in an environment where ethical behaviours and standards are valued. Regulation needs to be complemented within these communities and corporate cultures to ensure that ethical behaviours are embedded within society as a whole. Julia explains that ethics training implementation within the corporate environment will ensure that ethical behaviours in business practices. Ethical training by itself is not the answer to integrate employee behaviour up to ethical standards. Yes, training will help educate individuals and employees on ethical standards, but within this education, policies and procedures need to be introduced to guide them on a strong ethical pathway. This will then indeed allow individuals to find their strong moral compass that Julia talks about. Regulation provides standards, regulation strengthens safety, regulation ensures ethical behaviour.